I know this show's a little different because I like to get into some of the more philosophical points, some of the more historic points, and relate them to what's going on today. Because without that, I feel that we're just shooting spitballs at each other. The President of the United States had a press conference today. It was scary. It was pathetic. And all I could think of when I watched this press conference was, you are destroying my children's future. You are going to make it impossible for my children to live in a relatively free society, to pursue what makes them happy. You are going to enslave them to a massive debt that you as one man, one person, insists on imposing on this nation. I was listening very attentively, as hard as that was, at your complete ignorance and your dissembling. It's unconscionable what you're doing to the young people of this nation and their future while claiming to do it in their name. You are taking wealth that we have yet to create and squandering it. You're taking wealth from people who aren't even alive yet and squandering it on your fantasies, on your monuments, on your legacy. No father or mother who loves their children can sit quietly while this president is abusing their children in this fashion. And that is exactly what he's doing. Every single family is going to be affected by this. None will escape. None. When Paul Ryan told me yesterday on this program that if the Obama budget passes and we do not succeed in repealing Obamacare, that when our children are in their 20s and 30s earning a living, or trying to, the vast majority of them will be paying over 60% in a federal tax rate. Some will be paying over 80%. That's before we get to state and local taxes. That's about as extreme and abusive as a president can be to the next generation and the generation yet born. And to what end? The president insists on a $3.73 trillion budget. Well over $1 trillion of that is debt. In other words, well over $1 trillion of that will be paid some way, somehow, by your children and your grandchildren. It's passed on to them. So in this context, I must ask you, do you think that we're good stewards of the Treasury? Do you think this man is a good steward of the Treasury? What does a nation do with a president who's so irresponsible, so committed to societal transformation, so willing to defy the law as he's defying a federal judge in Pensacola, Florida, so willing to do whatever he has to do by executive fiat or regulations? What does a society do in response to that? He said today that he is prepared to veto a spending appropriations bill, that comes to his desk, if it cuts $60 billion. So in other words, every penny of the $3.73 trillion budget that he's proposed is crucial. Now, you know that's not true. He won't even tolerate a $60 billion cut. Let me suggest something here, and I want you to start thinking about it. Because we are far more concerned about the fate of this nation than our own president. We are far more concerned as a citizenry about the fate of this civil society than our president, who is constantly attempting through the law to change it, through spending to change it. Let me be very blunt with you, and you really need to start thinking about this. Do you agree with me that they must, in fact, shut down the federal government? Because that is the threat Obama and the Democrats keep hanging over the Republicans. In other words, either they get 90, 95, 98% of what they want, or they're saying, go ahead, Congress, shut down the government. My point is this. The government's going to shut down one way or another. In fact, if Obama has his way, it's going to collapse one day. Not on his watch. No, he would never allow that. But on somebody else's watch, like your children's. He's creating such a debt spiral, ladies and gentlemen, that it's going to drag the whole society down, and your children and your grandchildren, and they're going to suffocate from it. There's no way out. It has to collapse. So it seems to me, on behalf of our children and grandchildren, so they're not enslaved to the red ink that this president is pouring all over their future, that we need to encourage our representatives to let the government shut down. And we need to explain why the government's shutting down. We have in place a president of the United States who has created $5 trillion in on-budget operating debt. Not to speak of the over $20 trillion over the next year that he's created in obligations through Obamacare. Trillions and trillions today, tens of trillions tomorrow. How do you respond to a radical? You must have radical measures, or at least one. If the President of the United States believes that cutting $60 billion from $3.73 trillion is going to affect the basic services of the federal government, then there is no hope at compromise, there's no hope at negotiation, and those who are claiming they could deal with him because he's a centrist better wake the hell up fast, because he's not a centrist and he can't be dealt with. He must be defeated. Now, back to this shutting down the federal government. It is crucial that we not rely on the Republican leaders to get the message straight, because they won't. And even if they did, the media hate them, and the media will not give them voice. If the government is shut down, it is shut down because the President of the United States insists on impoverishing our children and our grandchildren. He insists on it. He insists on enslaving them in a society where there will be perpetual debt and massive taxes, where they will not be able to share in the liberty that past generations did enjoy and fought to pass on to future generations. This is not a president who respects American history. He doesn't respect the American founding. He doesn't respect the rule of law. We know that for a fact. He doesn't respect the laws of economics. He doesn't respect the private sector. He doesn't respect you. Period. We cannot allow our children and our grandchildren to be burdened with 65, 85% tax rates. We cannot allow them to be burdened with a massive government-run health care system that doesn't care for them nor provide them with health. This isn't about the Republican leadership and Barack Obama. This is about you and me, the citizens of this country. We're not on the sidelines. We're right in the middle of the stadium. We own the damn stadium and the whole field. This government belongs to us. They're talking about our future, the future of our children and grandchildren. They're talking about our money and their money, money yet earned. They don't get to make these decisions without our input and without our consent. And I'll be damned if I'm going to consent to impoverish my children and grandchildren because Barack Obama insists on it. And I don't care how the Republican leadership responds to it. I care how we respond to it. The Tea Party activists, the conservatives, individuals who don't know what the hell they are, who cares? From coast to coast, we will not sit idly by and allow this society to be destroyed for our children and grandchildren. Period. I don't give a damn who the President of the United States is or what he demands. One day, all these politicians will be gone. They're here temporarily, and yet their damage will be everlasting. It'll be perpetual unless we, the American people, take a stand. And we cannot, and we must not, leave it up to Washington, D.C. to straighten it out because they got us in this mess to begin with. So if it's Obama's position that this budget is what it needs to be, which does not address a single entitlement, which is larded with massive tax increases, which is larded with one massive deficit spending plan after another, then shut the damn government down. Because if we don't, Obama will destroy the whole thing. Somebody needs to say to President Obama, this budget is immoral. It's immoral because what it does to my children and my grandchildren. It is immoral.
to confiscate their future with your massive red ink. It is immoral not to spend an additional cent on border security, some kind of physical structure to helping obstruct the flow of illegals into this country. It is immoral to allow that situation to continue. It is immoral to squander the hard-earned dollars of people who pay taxes and to shut down their businesses. It is immoral to promote an agenda that ensures double-digit unemployment and home foreclosures as far as the eye can see. How do you separate, quote-unquote, the social issues from any other issue? Let me put it at a basic level. When you tell your kid not to steal, why are you telling them that? When you tell your kid not to cheat on a test, why are you telling your kid that? Those are moral values. Do you tell your kid, get an A no matter what? Do you tell your kid, get me, whatever's in the window at the cheapest price possible, even if you have to steal it? No! Your own household, your own family structure is based on a basic morality. Well, shouldn't our society be as well? Otherwise, we have presidents who lie through their teeth without any bit of shame, who present budgets to Congress that will destroy this society over time, who signs into law a health care bill that is destructive of our health and our care because he and his ideology are unmoored from morality. This is why I was saying the other day, I can't vote for somebody for president who tells us, the social issue. What do they even mean by the social issues? This is an entire way of living and thinking and behaving and governing. You don't say, you know what, today we're going to be moral, but not tomorrow. Put that aside. When you have a war on red ink, what is that based on? It's based on the moral notion that destroying a moral society is immoral to humanity. That's what it's based on. Ronald Reagan understood that. You know who else understood that? Abraham Lincoln. You know who else understood that? Edmund Burke. You can't separate out little chunks and pieces the way that politicians demand that you do. And then I read in some of these conservative sites, we liked the Mitch Daniels speech because he wasn't pandering. Of course he was pandering. The whole Tea Party movement rose up in response to the disastrous policies of this president. And even before, we're well aware of what this debt can do to the nation. What we're looking for is a political leader with a vision for this country. The vision that the Founding Fathers promoted. The vision that Abraham Lincoln promoted. The vision that Ronald Reagan promoted. That's what we're looking for. Somebody who can stand toe-to-toe with Obama. When he talks about compassion being more government and more spending, to have the clarity of mind to say, you know what, Mr. President, you're destroying the future for my children and grandchildren. That's immoral. You've already created $5 trillion in debt. Who's going to pay for that, Mr. President? But your kids and mine and children who are yet born? You tell us that you can't cut $60 billion from this budget. Are you telling us that every single expenditure out of this $3.73 trillion is worth indebting my children and grandchildren? Do you also understand, Mr. President, that 10, 15 years from now that what you're doing will destroy this society and transform it into something else? What exactly do you want to transform this society into? What exactly are your objectives? What exactly are your principles, Mr. President? And do your principles and objectives and viewpoints comport with the Constitution? If so, where? Where does the Constitution grant a president the power to do what you want to do? Are there leaders out there who are capable of this? I think there are. But if they're just focused on, I'm on this leg of the conservative, there are no legs of the conservative movement. There's a way of living. There's a belief system. There's a belief in a way of governing. There's not a three-legged stool.